What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab, episode 137. This is going to be all about consoles this week, and we're going to be revisiting a super mega show that we've done in the past, and returning guests, that's right, but it's plural because we kicked Andres off because it was such a good show. No, I'm just kidding. Andres is finishing up his degree with a huge project right now for his data analysis, data coding stuff, and so he requested to take a week off to kind of just finalize everything so that he can finish up. And we have the one and only Switch from omnicmeta.com. What's up, Switch?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
It's going well. And we also have CS, top 500, returning top 500 player from PlayStation 4, and also DPS main for those curious. CS, what's up, CS?
Oh, what's going on, guys? It's been too long since I've been on.
Yeah, I got a new setup, new stuff going on, and everyone around. Switch is hiding the secrets of Omnic Meta behind him with the wicker gates.
You have a big 10 by 10 computer back there.
You know, it's funny. I have all these posters and stuff that I used to hang before I moved, and I just have not been able to put them up because there's windows behind me, and so it just does not look that great. And one day I'll have to like rearrange it.
There you go.
Show off my stuff, because that's what Rob gets to do, and I'm not able to do that. So
yeah, actually in July I'll be moving again because my contract and stuff for my teaching job. So I'm pretty excited because I got to see the new place already, because I know the guy that I'm replacing, and the apartment is really nice, and I'm excited. I'm kind of nervous though because I'm not sure about the internet situation there yet, but the new room is going to be much nicer. And I'm like, it's more of a good thing because I'm pretty sure the internet speeds are going to improve a little bit because there's less tenants in that apartment, and they don't like route them all together, or they route them all together, and this apartment has a lot more people in it. So I'm hoping my internet speeds will actually get up and maybe my ping will improve, but we'll see. But guys, this week we're going to be talking about consoles, differences, similarities, common questions, pretty much just like what is Overwatch console? We did this in the past a long time ago, over 2 years ago, I'd say, and we're going to basically just revisit that. We have Switch here to talk about some new data. We have a new meta. We have lots of new heroes to revisit with this. We thought it would be a great new topic to cover, but we have a few things to go through in the announcements. And actually, because having awesome guests on the show is one thing, but having awesome guests on the show that listen regularly is another thing. So we're going to have them help me out with the announcements this week. CS is going to help us out at the very beginning, talking about game night.
Yep. I've been hosting game night on PS4 the last 2 years. It's at the end of every month. It's basically a night for the community to come together and play a mixture of fun, goofy game modes if you want to, or a more competitive scrim environment where you don't have to worry about your teammates flaming you. Hopefully. We're all nice people. I can't speak for the PC people, but I know the PS4 people won't yell at you if you try to one-trick sim the whole night. It's a ton of fun. An example of like a game we played last month was Ghostbusters, where it was 6 McCrees versus 6 Sombras, and the Sombras had permanent invisibility, and the McCrees were trying to catch them with flashbangs. It was a ton of fun. You should definitely show up to any platform, even Xbox.
Honestly, I feel like you guys have a much better time than our try-hard stuff on PC.
Yeah, it's really nice because it's smaller. We get like 12 to 24 people, and so there's a big cycle of like newcomers that come, and also people that have been there for a while. So it's a lot. I hand balance every game, which is so hard because Blizzard's balancing algorithm is very complex, and matching that to get a close game is incredibly difficult. But we get kind of close, and yeah. You guys should try out some goofy customs if you can on PC. Maybe I'll show up to one of the PC game nights and introduce some mayhem.
we've tried some goofy stuff before too, but I don't think
Everyone wants to try hard. It's so sad. I was like, hey guys, you want to do like a 50 HP Reinhardt's with and like you can only use Fire Strike and has instant cooldowns.
So
That's the best.
Yeah, it's a strategic podcast, so it's understandable people want to improve.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of different too. The games, like, these are pickup games, right? Where people actually communicate. People actually try to like, build heroes. And we play Sim too. A lot of people just play Sim, and they'll be really good with Sim because they'll be like, hey, I'm going to put the teleporter here. Bastion, how about you teleport, up here and just murder the backline. It's fun in a different sort of way. You feel like, wow, I'm playing with masters, grandmaster players. And I feel like I'm not, just dying all the time. I'm actually contributing. So
yeah, that's the other thing is we get people from silver to GM, and everyone gets to play with each other, and it's a good learning experience.
Yeah, we love doing those games because there was one week in particular when there was a couple like low folks, including myself, alongside of a bunch of Grandmaster players and Master players. And we're just like, let's go 5 tanks and 1 healer. And we're just like, this, I think that they basically hit a critical mass of playing too much competitive. They just want to goof around by playing stuff, but they play it really well. So it feels really different. So I really like that dynamic when you're trying to do pickup groups and just goof around. I love that. But yeah, we got a couple ad reads for us this week. And that's right, that's a couple. We have a new sponsor this week from Shazir, who's asking about some help that he wants to recruit some Omnic scientists. So he says, welcome scientists. One of our patrons, Shazir, is working on a staff to staff out a new scrum team for downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota, and is looking to hire a mid to senior software quality assurance engineer. You would need to have quality engineering background that includes white box, black box testing, as well as creating test automation using tools built in .NET and Selenium, as well as using network tools like Fiddler, JMeter, and Postman. He'd love to work with you guys from Omnic Lab, of course, so please ping Shazir in the Discord or on Twitter for more information. Also, we have Top Score Solutions returning as per usual. Omnic Lab is definitely presented by these guys, a esports-oriented community for business education analysis. If you guys want to develop businesses, services, apps, orgs, or just creating content around esports, they're here to help. Check out their flagship podcast, Esports Business Podcast. Andres and I were actually on it a couple weeks ago. You can check that out there and find out more information on how we started Omnic Lab, how they're interviewing other people in the esports community that they can get a handle on. So they also have a blog at topscoresolutions.com and a regular, in case you missed it, brief news article update. So check them out on their website and their Discord community, which is linked in the show notes. If you have more questions, you want to talk about esports, or you just forget all the links, just head over to topscoresolutions.com and you can find all the information there. And we have our partner on the show this week, so I'll let him do his own ad read. So what's up with Omnic Meta right now?
Right. So I'm switched from omnicmeta.com. This week, I've been doing a lot of work, and I guess I kind of mentioned on my private Twitter, so I'll publicly say it on the show. I'm trying to get some Overwatch League stats up on the site. Blizzard has an API. I've been trying to work kind of hard. I hope that it'll be up before Overwatch League starts, but who knows? But I hope that'll be good for you guys, people that play especially fantasy, Overwatch, or people that just want to keep up with what's happening in the game and their favorite players and their favorite teams. So this week I did have a chance to look at patch 1.32, which is the Reaper buff and armor nerf patch. And I've got an article about that. I'll let you read it. You can go to omnicmeta.com to do that. But basically, long story short, it seems like it's been a pretty big net improvement for Reaper, especially in terms of offensive output. He seems to have a lot more survivability, which has enabled him. He also is getting a lot more ultimate kills, which might be due to a number of reasons, but including like the fact he's getting Ana Nano, or just that he's able to survive with all that healing. His win rates have shot up quite a bit, 5%, which is very, on the extreme for changes, single changes like this. So that's obviously pretty good for him. He's still not being picked as a must pick anywhere really, but he is being picked as a consistent pick all the way through about platinum. GM players seem to still want to play goats, but other than that, he seems to be much more popular as well. So I'll let you guys read the deep analysis of that and think about it, and send me a note if you have any other feedback on it.
Yeah, this is some really interesting stuff, to be honest. I was just skimming through this morning, and I know CS, you said he took some time to read through this.
Yeah, like I said, I think with changes like this, so what was the change? Well, armor was taken back a bit, which it's harder to quantify through the player stats, but his self-healing went from 30% damage done to 50% damage done. And it's hard to tell how big of an impact a change like that will make. Most people were asking for more mobility, or give him ability that's a little bit more useful than Shadow Step, or give him a good right-click ability, something like that. They decided to buff his self-healing, and at least for the middle tiers, it seems to have made a big difference. And I've played a lot of Reaper too as part of writing this article. I do think that he's actually much easier to play now. You can play in the front line with tanks. You don't necessarily have to be solo flank Reaper. If you do, I would suggest getting your one kill, or if you fail to get the kill, to get out. That seems to be his play style, to be very aggressive with the front line. Um, he is a lot better. I mean, to see win rates go up 5%. I mean, he now has basically the best win rates out of any of the offensive heroes. So it's a pretty big
any
deal.
comments?
Yeah, I mean, just looking through those stats that you posted on that site, the most interesting one to me was the kills per ultimate is what went up the highest, and I guess we saw this coming. The biggest problem with his ult wasn't damage output; it was that he was so killable during it. And what was it, like 21% increase in amount of kills he gets per Reaper ult now? That is insane. And that's just, I mean, it could be like you said from like nano boost, but I also think if you add 20% extra healing and you jump in on like 4 targets, that's the extra push you need to survive over. So that's a really cool change, and it's cool that you can see that through your data. It impacts how you play.
Yeah, I agree, and it also feels pretty good to get some parts, like with regards to big changes like this. If any aspect of you predicting something right or wrong comes through as being correct, you feel really good, because predicting changes in Overwatch is pretty much just like rolling the dice. Yeah, so I felt like Andres and I did a really good coverage of what we thought about the changes being what was the number one thing that we wanted. You know, the number one issue with Reaper was survivability. The number one thing was, you know, mobility with surviving. And then the best part about the change was Death Blossom. And we got pretty much all that stuff right. There's a lot of little details that we were talking about throughout the show that we probably got wrong with regards to, like, is he going to be better at this? It like you said, Switch, it's kind of just like a little bump across the board, more or less, right? And then you have the Death Blossom thing that just gets ridiculous with as far as effectiveness. So...
yeah, that gets really ridiculous. I've watched, there's a couple of guys, including a guy by the name of Purge, who plays, I think he plays contenders in Europe. And yeah, he basically is one-tricked Reaper into high top 500.
Sweet.
Which is pretty wild, so.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. See if you guys can run Reaper and see what he feels like to you. The other thing that's also intriguing here about stats is this is going to be across the board for most of it. And some of the win rates being evened out kind of showcases how strong Reaper is at every rank. And so that's something that you should be considering if you're playing in a lower rank or a mid rank or even in Diamond, that the skill and or not the skill, the win rate that you may have is going to be pretty much flat. So if you can kind of adjust your playstyle and not, like you said, flank all the time, maybe play close to your tanks and adjust your playstyle to improve your Reaper play, you're going to see pretty much the same like climb if you can continue to climb at the same rate that you're learning. I think that's a pretty cool thing about Reaper right now.
Definitely. So the other announcement is that of course Omnic Lab is still the Humble Bundle monthly affiliate. So this is a good way to support the show. You can basically sign up. I think is it $11 or is it $12 a month?
I think it's like
it is
12 after tax.
What do I forget? It's $12 a month. So for $12 a month, you get a ton of games each month. You can do it for 1 month. The month that a few months ago they had Overwatch as one of it, so I used it as a way to get my friends to basically get Overwatch for $12, which is a really, really good deal. And a lot of those people had never played games before, never played first-person shooters, and now we're regularly playing together. So it's a great way to support the show. Like I said, you can sign up for just 1 month, and the link is in the show notes, or you can basically search. I think you might be able to search on the site for Omnic Lab as well.
Yep, you can just hit ! Humble in the chat, and you can find it pretty much in Discord or in the Twitch stream. And speaking of the Twitch stream, we have a brand new Twitch Prime sub, JRock69. Thank you so much for your sub. If you guys want to support the show on the live stream, you can get a free shout out on the show that we do record and get it in there if you show up for the live show. So it's big thanks to you. You can subscribe with Twitch Prime or regular Twitch because we're affiliates. Let's get into the questions, CS. I think it's time to talk mostly about console for the rest of the show. And the first thing is always what people want to ask is, what is the difference between PC and console, and what is myth and what is reality? So I'm going to kind of kick it to you. You can kind of do stream of consciousness here. Switch and I may interrupt to kind of get some clarity or continue the questions going in that same venue. But you have the floor, my man.
Right. Well, I would say there's a lot of little differences that added up together is sort of a death by 1,000 cuts to the idea that the skill level in between the two would be the same. And I know I might be in the minority in this because, for instance, Jane one of the Dallas Fuel assistant coach, I believe. He made a video about it, and he said that in his experience with console players, they usually can climb back to whatever they are when they swap over to PC. I think that's a little skewed from Jane, because if the only two ways Jane would know about a console player is if A, he's personally coaching them and helping them. So yeah, getting coached by one of the best coaches in the world would do that to you. Or B, he's heard about them because they've already managed to climb and they're at the top, and so that's why he's seen them in some sort of pro scenario. And of course, that's just taking your sample size from like already, you're only looking at the people who succeeded, and then you're saying it's good. So I would say I disagree with Jane there. It's not a big difference, but I mean, we can just start with like the biggest difference I would say is time to kill. And this one's pretty obvious. I mean, mouse and keyboard, you can aim much better. You can aim faster. You have higher sensitivity. And so people die much faster. You can't stay out in the open. This is a console like across all ranks, from bronze to grandmaster. A console player is used to being able to play McCree and peek around a corner and like scout their team comp and be pretty confident he's not going to die. He's not going to get instant headshotted nearly as often. Maybe in GM he will. This is pretty good GM widows, but he's not going to get lasered down by a soldier. Whereas on PC, I learned this pretty quickly. You can't just stick your neck out and expect to survive for nearly as long as console. A slower game pace too, which I don't know. It's hard to tell when you're in game, but if you watch out, like if you guys ever watch, if anyone's ever watched my stream or game nights, you'll just notice the difference in pace, and that comes from you're allowed to play slower when people die slower, when you know you're not going to get lasered in the head. That's really the big, and other stuff cascades from that time to kill. So I wouldn't say like a PC player and a console player, like a console player wouldn't, it's not like they shouldn't always be able to get up to the same rank. That depends on the person. But I would say like a diamond console team would lose to a PC console or a PC diamond team like 9 times out of 10. Even if you take away aim, say like they're in the same aim, just in terms of the pace of the game, knowledge, and communication, like the PC team's just going to win.
So basically, pacing is kind of the biggest thing.
Yes.
Because you can't.
But that's something.
Yeah, go ahead, Switch.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's something you could adjust to, though, right?
Right, but not everybody.
It just takes time. Yeah.
Some people are using that as a crutch. There are some people who are, say, got to masters on console, having very low management, but they're pretty good with a controller, and maybe they'll go to PC and they can't get to masters without knowing how to position properly, and so they're not going to be able to reach that same rank. That's a big difference. I've got, but for instance, on the flip side, I've got a friend, shout out to you, fellow Throw from console. He just watched to PC, and he's our main tank player. So he already was only relying on his game sense and positioning, and he just hit masters a couple weeks ago or a week ago. He's the same rank he is on console. So it can be dependent on what you play and your play style.
So you think even between roles, right? So the one person, so you mentioned Jane, and maybe Jane's aware of people that have made the transition successfully. I think I was talking pre-show. There's a player on Atlanta Reign's team whose name's Gator. Gator's a guy who played on Contenders, basically one of the people that invented the GOATS comp, so you can thank him for that. But he actually came over from playing Xbox, and he's made a lot of the same comments you have, but that is slower pace. But he's a tank player, right? So do you think that is it the tanks players, or is it just the DPS that would see the biggest change, do you think, or would it also be support and some tanks?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think DPS would see the biggest change. I mean, I feel that personally. The last few seasons that I've hit top 500 before I swapped to PC, so like season 12, season 11, I was playing Hanzo, and I was able to just really relax on my other like avenues of the game. When it turns out if you can just hit heads with arrows, you don't really need to worry about your positioning too much. You can just hit people in the head. Whereas like a Reinhardt isn't afforded that luxury. He's not going to throw some magic fire strike that curves and kills all 6 people. He doesn't have the mechanical ability within his kit. But definitely, I think a tank player would have a better time. It also depends on how much time you have played between the two. There's a lot of people who, like, for me, controller since I was 3. The last 20 years of my life, only controller. I only used a mouse for browsing the internet. And so it went from second nature. I could shoot somebody in the head with a controller the same way I can like pick up an apple with my hand. Like I've played it so much, it's just not even part of like your conscious, it's your subconscious. With a controller or a mouse, I'm having to think. I'm using most of my brain power on where to put this mouse so the cursor ends up on their head. And when you have to use that brain power for that, you're not thinking about the fact that Zarya probably has ult, and you probably shouldn't be clumped up next to your tanks as a DPS player. You just don't have the brain space available.
Because you're doing
And so I
muscle
think that
memory
hurts
plus
DPS player a
game
lot.
sense like overlapping. And when you already
Right, you
have
only
the
got so
game
much game
sense
space.
and you're like getting distracted at that point because you've already got the knowledge base of this X skill level where you were from and you're moving over. So it's like what you know to be true is now being sidelined by a distraction of how do I use this thing? You know?
Exactly. I look dumber. I looked like a dumber player on PC. And it's because more of my brain is being used to try really, really hard to get that cursor on the enemy's head. And you just can't. I just don't have the brain space. I mean, that'll go away with time. And that's what Jane said too. He prefaced it by saying, given enough time to transition. And I've spent a couple hundred hours now on PC. And I can feel it getting, I'm thinking less and less about it. And so just yesterday I hit 34, or 2 days ago I hit 34.99, so I'm almost masters.
1 point away from masters.
It was so brutal. It does the thing where it like very slowly ticks up at the end, and you're like, come on, 35. No, it's gonna get you 3,400.
Yeah.
But
I know that very well. That happened to me a bunch when I was getting on my diamond climb. I was like getting up to the,
oh no,
29.90 and then drop like 40
they
ranks.
do it on purpose.
Wow.
Rank just shouldn't exist. It should just go 98 and then the next round up to the next thing, so we never have to deal with it. That'd be a great buff.
You think they could be nice and just give you the extra point, right? I mean,
come
really,
on.
what's
Pity
it to them?
Pity point. A literal pity point. Just give it
What's
to me.
it to them, right?
Side note on that, I did hear there was like some logic to this because once you do get in, they, for whatever reason, it's like if you, let's say you get in after that next rank, you have like this huge buffer. You have like 20 plus rank over 3,000 if you're going to 3,000, right? And instead of the 29.99. And you get over, and once you get over that hump, you have like actually a little bit of a buffer, so you don't like actually just go straight back into the previous rank right away.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting mentality switch for me. But again, you don't remember the times when you're dipping out in and out. You remember the one time that you made it for the first time. So
right.
there's always
It's
that.
a big moment.
But I wanted to kind of talk a little bit to that because I know a lot of myths that people like to claim are also in this category, where we kind of talk about the death of 1,000 cuts. There's lots of little things, but they kind of all get around the same thing of the distracting things that you're trying to learn when you're switching to PC, aka the peripherals, the keyboard, and the mouse, as well as trying to retain what you already know to be true, and then the pacing, informing your positioning. It's just something you need to do. But now, the other thing that I've seen is that X, Y, and Z heroes are just better on console, or these heroes are useless because you're on PC now. That type of a mentality shift really kind of turns a lot of players off from even trying to make the transition to PC, or getting frustrated when they're trying to transition to PC because that's what they like to play on console. But what do you think about this for an opinion? Common myth or difference that actually does exist. What do you think about that?
Right. So I'd say that's actually not a myth. I would agree that that's kind of true. It's not like to an enormous degree. It's just one of the many small cuts that makes it different. But for instance, the builder heroes is a great example. If you can have a hero that lets other automated things do the aiming for you, it's going to be stronger on console versus the other players who are trying to play aim-intensive heroes. But Blizzard, this is the only time Blizzard's balanced console separately in terms of heroes. Sim and Tor both had their turret damage nerfed compared to PC. I don't know if it's been fully reverted yet. It might still be there, but that helps. And the biggest difference, as a general term, in terms of like console versus PC heroes, is if there's a hero that's normally countered well by coordination, that hero is stronger on console because there's less coordination. So actually, speaking of Reaper, on console, because the best way to counter Reaper, and the reason he's not overpowered in the pros, is because he tries to flank, you hear his clown shoes flopping around, somebody calls him out, and he gets CC'd and chain CC'd and killed. But on console, if you only have one person who is using their mic, might kill 3 people before they even notice and try to address the situation. So that's a really good example. Doomfist, oh my gosh. Doomfist, before he was nerfed on console, almost made me quit playing Overwatch. Trying to play ADC, that's League, DPS player against Doomfist. It was even worse with sensitivities, because on console your sensitivity is lower.
Mm-hmm.
You would hear that grunt of Doomfist, and you know you're already dead because he's coming at you with 125 damage seismic slam.
And you can't move.
You can't move, and you can't turn fast enough. You literally can't turn your character model, if you have a moderate sensitivity, fast enough to react and hit enough damage before he can kill you, because he's already behind you. He's set up on some. This guy's got 2,000 hours of Doomfist, so he found some pixel perfect ledge that he found that no one even sees. He's already hit you for 125 damage. He's got shields, and you've lost. And
Yeah.
because there's no coordination to help you burst down that Doomfist, and your sensitivity is lower to react. He was I think much more powerful. He was already powerful, but he was much more powerful on console. Super annoying.
I can imagine the seismic slam thing being a huge issue too, because you can't get your movement speed. Once you get knocked in the air, he can control that plus the uppercut. Like, there's no way for you to move around or react. And on console, you already don't have a whole lot of speed or time to react in the first place, just from the nature of being limited to joysticks and not being able to move around as quickly.
Yeah, like a horror movie. You hear the grunt, the grunt of Doomfist, grunt of death, and you immediately start moving your joystick to the right, like, come on, watching McCree's Peacekeeper slowly sweep the screen so he can turn around fast enough to find the Doomfist head, and you just don't have time.
It's watching a train wreck in slow motion.
Do you think that Blizzard, CS, do you think that Blizzard is active? I mean, they've never explicitly really said that they've made changes specifically for console, but I was just thinking that, they reworked Torb, they reworked Sim, they just made these changes to Doomfist, like you said, and these things change the playstyle of those heroes, at least especially for Torb and Sim. They got rid of the crazy turret with the crazy ult for Torb. They got rid of Symmetra's like 6 turrets and just did some changes like that. Do you think that do you think that that's something that maybe was intentionally done to help console, or do you think that those changes have really helped console as well?
I do think you're absolutely right. Those changes were actually huge in terms of helping how powerful they were on console. Both of those changes on those heroes made coordination with the team more important, which counteracts, like, the lack of coordination counteracted the lack of aiming for that hero, because Sim counters bad aiming, but you need good coordination to play with her. So you're totally right with there. That was a great change. Saying Blizzard did that purposely up console, with the last 3 years I've had on console and the lack of communication and direct help, I would say is giving them. I think they blundered into that one just by they were trying to change the hero and make them more well-rounded overall, and that happened. Maybe, I would doubt it, but it did help. You're totally right. That made those heroes much more manageable.
They did the same for Bastion too, right? I mean, they also got rid of crit shots.
Right.
Yeah. I have to kind of transition this statement, because I feel like it goes really well with asking about compositional things on console, because right now the community, whether you're at bronze or grandmaster, seems to think that GOATS is what everyone's playing, even though it's more of like, this is the popular strong thing that's going on right now, not necessarily what the community is doing. I mean, if you spend 20 to 50 games in ranked in this month, you'll see that there's not a whole lot of those games where everyone's coordinated enough to even be willing to run GOATs, even though they know it's strong, because they just want to play what they want to play. It's a casual player base, right? So since you're in more of the competitive scene inside of the upper ranks on console, I was curious, is GOATs a main thing? And if it's not, what is being played? Are tanks feeling really, really powerful on console just because of how much AoE healing that you can perform now and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, tanks are super powerful on console just because there's less aiming, and GOATs is super powerful. And it's not like the console community isn't aware of GOATs.
Right.
I would describe most metas as it's the same but less used, because console players, they know they're not one step away from getting paid to play the game. Even in GM, even in in my top 500 games, where most people in that, it's a really high elo, like 4,200 game. People on PC in that rank are trying to play with you no matter what their goals to win, and a lot of them I think have goal aspirations to join a contenders team or what have you. But on console, since that's not really an avenue, there are certainly tournaments that happen, like grassroots tournaments that people host. It's not a big deal. People are more inclined to play what they like. So for GOATs is a great example. it's played far less in Grandmaster on console than Grandmaster on PC. I watch Siegel stream a lot, and that guy can't. In the last 3 months, you can't play like if 5 games you play 4 are going to be goats. On console, it's the opposite. It'll be 1 of every 5 games goats, just because people will go into a game and someone will suggest like, "Hey, you guys want to run goats?" I won't just be like, "Nah." I mean, that's better, but that's not fun. And I'd rather play what's fun, even in a competitive environment. So, which I actually kind of like. I don't like playing goats either. I'd much rather, go 2-2-2. So as people play what they like.
Yeah.
More.
That makes sense to me. I mean, what about talking about the topic of aim assist? I know that this is kind of a big thing with what people are saying is why console feels better. But anytime that some folks have said, oh, lol, aim assist, that's why you're good on console and you can do that. And I'm like, well, I would honestly feel like any game on a controller that uses joysticks that doesn't have aim assist, it just isn't fun. I don't know if anybody's tried to play a game without aim assist on a console controller, but it is miserable.
Yeah, I don't. Aim assist is a band-aid on a severed limb. It does not help. It does not boost them above some baseline. It's clunky, especially I'm kind of a FPS snob on console. I've been playing, like, I love the Battlefield games, and I even played Counter-Strike on console. It came CS:GO. So I've been playing FPSs for like 8 years. And I can tell you that Overwatch's aim assist system, even though it's been improved upon, is the clunkiest out there. If you are aiming at a group of people, say goats, because of course we all have seen a lot of goats, you're aiming at a choke, say you're playing soldier, they're crashing in, Lucio speeding in, and they're all clumped together. Aim assist will make your cursor jerk around randomly to all of them as they're moving, and you can't track one target. It's actually hurting you in that situation.
Because there's multiple targets.
Yeah, and something about the hitboxes of when aim assist is registering and its strength is just clunky. They updated like 6 months ago. This is I would say, guys, if you're using legacy aim assist and you're playing console, please switch off that. Go to the new one. It's much better. I think it default switches it, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
I think takes into account your distance from the center of mass, and it's much better. But it's still clunky. A really good example of aim assist and just general differences between console and PC I think need to be addressed is like Ashe. So Ashe came out. She's got that really powerful ability called Dynamite, where she throws it, and if you shoot it midair, it'll explode. Dynamite doesn't have aim assist on it, which in itself is fine. I mean, most people can hit a Dynamite without the aim assist. It moves in a very constant trajectory. But the problem is you're always shooting Dynamite in the middle of a bunch of enemies. And guess what those enemies have? They have aim assist. So your cursor, while you're trying to hit Dynamite, your cursor is dragging you away from that Dynamite because it's aim assisting towards the people. And you don't want to do 85 damage on that dumb Reinhardt that's going to get healed back up. You want to hit that Dynamite. And it makes it way hard. It makes it way harder to hit that Dynamite. And that's something that wasn't thought about when it was implemented. Like Ashe's Dynamite is just much weaker on console. It's harder to hit. And I think like they should add some system where when you're aiming kind of close to the Dynamite on console, it will turn off aim assist for everybody else around it, so you can at least track the Dynamite without it dragging everywhere. That's a great example of a change.
Interesting.
It doesn't help. I don't think aim assist. I mean, it obviously is better than nothing, but it's not great.
Twitch, do you have any questions about aim assist? I know this is kind of like a really hard thing for us to kind of quantify because we don't have it.
If you think that aim, as someone who doesn't play like console, I think my bias would be, oh, it's aim assist, so therefore it basically aims. It does a pretty good job of helping you aim. Then you would think that would reflect in the heroes that people would pick. People would pick the burst damage heroes, right? People would play McCree. They would choose McCree. They would choose Ashe all the time. They would choose Ana, right? They would
Widowmaker too, yeah.
Yeah, and they would do that, but that's not really what you see, right? You do see them played, but from what the data that I gather for Omnic Meta, that's not those characters, those burst damage, aim intensive characters are still being played more on PC. So aim assist doesn't really give you that, doesn't really bridge that gap. And it's interesting. It doesn't bridge the gap enough. I wonder how many people are even playing with it on then. I mean, it depends on your hero, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
There's a slider so you can defect it for like projectile heroes. You can turn it down, and they've added that since launch. That's really helpful. But definitely the hit scan players in like top 500 are the most common players that are using keyboard and mouse.
Interesting.
Those are the characters that you need. I mean, imagine you're playing Widowmaker and you see an enemy Widowmaker on the corner of your screen or corner of your scope, and you want to drag your cursor over to them to headshot them. But in between your cursor and that Widowmaker, there's two enemies. There's like a Reinhardt and a Hog. They're fat, just in your way. Well, it's going to slow down your cursor every time you pass those two heroes, and it makes flick shots really, really hard. It doesn't help you. Sometimes it'll hurt you, and it's hard to make the aim assist algorithm smart enough to only ever help you and not hurt you. But it still definitely does not boost you. Like a console player with aim assist versus a mouse and keyboard player, the mouse and keyboard player wins like every time. It's not close. In my opinion, at least.
Yeah. So that being said, let's kind of jump down here in the show notes for you guys. Those listening probably can't really understand, but one of the big things for questions that we get about that particular thing is, what about crossplay? Because like, if it is such a big disadvantage in some players' minds, whether you're PC or console, and you have that opinion, what would be the issue of having a cross-platform play? Because a lot of people are just like, well, I just want to play with my friend, and they can't afford a nice PC. I just want to go play with my friend on console, but I don't want to go buy a PS4 and learn and level up an account to go play ranked with them. You know what I mean? So This is a big thing that's actually been recurring for a long time, but for whatever reason over the last couple months, this has been a pretty big topic that people are bringing up in the forums regularly.
Yeah, I think it's has to do with Fortnite. As usual, Fortnite gave crossplay between like all three platforms like 6 months ago, and since then Blizzard commented on it and said they might try. I don't think crossplay between PC and the consoles, I don't think should ever happen in a competitive environment. I understand like in quick play if you want to play with your friends, and maybe if you could register using mouse and keyboard on your controller, there's like compatible peripherals that you can do that. Mouse and keyboard, and then queue you into like a PC lobby. That'd be fine.
Okay.
Maybe like arcade games, a separate queue. That'd be fine to play with your teams. But never a controller in a competitive environment versus a PC. Mouse and keyboard, I don't think it should ever happen. Definitely with the two Xbox and PS4 though. Those two are separate and they're small communities. My queue times, if I try to queue like optimal times on my main, I can be sitting there for like 12, 15 minutes. It's rough. I mean, that's pretty normal for, I guess, maybe for like grandmasters, but even on like masters, the community is definitely lower. It'd be nice to have Xbox and PS4 together at all times.
At least cross the two of those universes, right? Those two platforms together.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure why. I mean, I know why. It's because Sony doesn't like to play nice with other, console makers. But I don't see that going well in a competitive environment. I mean, do you like a competitive environment with a controller and a mouse and keyboard?
I think it'd be really tough. I think you just talking about some of the differences, including like just a faster paced and expectations. What happens if you have a competitive match that has 6 PC players against 6 console players?
Right.
It's going to be a huge shock. Now maybe they would be an adjustment, but you'll end up with, they got the PC hit scan main, and we got
the other guy.
Yeah, we got the console hit scan.
We got the other guy. That's his username.
Do you? I mean, we have part of it's like worrying about toxicity, but part of it's also just worrying about expectations, because you may have. What's the population on console versus PC? Are 80% of the people that play? I don't know the answer to this. Are 80% of the people that play competitive ladder on Overwatch, are they on PC? So there's just so few people to play that, if that's the case, then pretty much all the console people might, who knows what happens to them. If it's the other way around, if the casual audience that play competitive ladder is so much bigger in console, then that also is not necessarily good. So there's a lot of balance type things, right? I like what you said, CS, that maybe if you had mouse and keyboard and can register that, then that somehow enables you to to do it. And maybe there's other things too. But that's not saying that mouse and keyboard is the ultimate divider, because don't forget that my PC does 300 frames a second, right? So,
Right.
and there's other things too that I might have an advantage with
Yeah.
hardware that you don't have access to. So,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
do they
Like
even
other
have
side,
the same-
console's slowing down too. Of a big
Yeah.
deal. There's load times just to load into for your model to be registered into the game can take a long time. It's even worse than Xbox, but you can be sitting there invisible, like when you respawn,
mhm.
waiting for your model to render, and it's really hard to play when you can't see yourself, and that actually affects the competitive environment quite a bit. I wish there's like an optimization patch that would come out, because it's kind of exceeding the limits of what PS4 and Xbox can do with all the updates they've made.
Right. So here's, like per usual, I like to play devil's advocate on this argument because I think that it's valuable to have this in the game outside of the competitive experience based on the numbers that you can get. And also living in Japan, where this society of gamers here are predominantly not PC gamers. That's why Japan is one of the top contenders when it regards to watching any fighting game at EVO. Like, if you look at the top 16, there's at least 2 of them are from Japan, like, every time. It doesn't matter the fighting game. It could be the most fringe, silly, like, goofy Chinese anime, like, style game that's fighting, and there's still going to be participating Japanese players because they're just super good at it. All the way over to the most Japanese games that exist, like Super Smash Brothers Ultimate and, like, Tekken and Mortal Kombat, you know? Yeah. So, and even Dragon Ball Z, which I guess would probably be the most Japanese title, right?
Yeah.
So that being said, I have been experienced to very little people here at my rural area that even know what Overwatch is, that it exists as a game. And I have only met like 2 or 3, and every single one of them plays on console. And the majority of them actually don't play on Xbox either. They play on PlayStation. So that was one thing that I thought was like, well, if I want to go play with them, I love CS's idea of just allowing cross-platform play across the board and then restricting competitive. I think that is an excellent way to do stuff for the game, to allow cross-platform play. And then you compress the individual ones. You put Microsoft and Sony in a room and you say, you're not leaving here until you guys can get along. So
they would die
can,
before they made a conclusion.
You just have to disarm them, right? And they still probably choke each other out before they leave the room.
Or just starve. Just pout at each other for 48 hours.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I think would be really great if they could get to work for them. And the other thing, too, that I was also thinking about is getting Overwatch on Switch. The more and more I look at wanting to get this on Switch, the less and less it seems possible. Because of the one thing that Switch brought up, ironically, as the connecting piece, which is the FPS. The FPS and the resolution issue on Switch is the most restrictive thing for putting Overwatch on it. Because you got 60 FPS at 720p. There's no way that people are going to want to play Overwatch at 60 FPS on a 720p display.
It even hold 60 on. I mean, Breath of the Wild was clocking in like 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
you might
it'd
be right.
Super hard. You can't change on console, right? You can't change like texture quality or anything like that.
Oh no, you can't. No, that's all locked.
It's just default. Yeah.
I think it would be. I know the chip that is inside the Nintendo Switch pretty well. I think it'd be hard. I think it would be. I think they know that. It would be super cool because it would be the only unless you have some kind of amazing little laptop custom thing, the only way you could play on the go, right, with Wi-Fi. That'd be super cool to be able to
that
play
would be interesting, right? If they ended up cutting the price again in the next year and putting it on mobile as like a discounted price, because right now they've already cut the price to $20, right? It's not $40 anymore. So if they cut the price again to $10, let's say in the future, in the next 2 years, they put it on mobile devices and then they put it on the Switch, and the Switch is just qualified as a mobile device. So if you're playing on iPads or Android pads, like tablets and phone or Switch, you could possibly do that. And then in that case, Switch would be the the best, right? Unless you got those new like phones that are playing 60 FPS type stuff, and then you're like, well, stink.
Yeah.
So it is interesting that kind of changes the model a bit. Then you get like very Fortnite like, where you're on everything and you're free to play completely. It changes the game quite a bit. It's kind of crazy to think that there's cross-platform play in that game, because that,
I wish I would have done more research on Fortnite, because I don't know if they have cross-platform play with regards to how they balance getting people in the game. You know, we don't know what their algorithm looks like. Are they trying to do a 50-50 split with how they're matchmaking people? Because in Overwatch, if they did a 50-50 split, then people would be out crying about something else, which is, oh my goodness, every time I get these games, the other team gets their only 2 console players that are on their team are tank players, and ours are DPS, and we can't kill anything. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
you're already trying to dodge the Torb one trick. If you also have to dodge the console McCree,
then you only have 3 avoid slots.
Right.
So
that's why I think the comment about maybe disallowing them for competitive play only, that makes sense to me.
That does make a lot of sense.
It's pretty easy to do, I think, technically for them, because they already have separate queues based on your location. It prefers that you play on East Coast or West Coast, or etc. It's probably fairly trivial for them to just have a flag that says, "Oh, I'm this is console." That also enables the fact that you could play PlayStation, Xbox. So I don't know. It's a good idea. It'd be fun if you think about the game modes. It would be fun to go PC versus console. You could play Mystery Heroes. That's like one of the most popular game modes. That's not competitive. That'd be super fun.
I think it would be just really good for Overwatch League communities, and even just Overwatch communities, period, like ours. Like, being able to bring you guys in, CS, to our game nights would just be a dream come true for me. I think that would be super cool, because these are players that listen to the show, committed to loving the content that we make, and they're just an entire subsection of our community that's like, I don't get to interact with them inside of the game at all. And it's not any fault of either of ours. It's just the fact that they chose a different platform than I did.
And if they ever decided, to do guilds, and maybe they could integrate that somehow, right? Even if you couldn't play together in competitive mode, like what you said, Yoav, if you had guilds, you could have that collection of people where you know that they're playing, and you can pay attention to what they're doing. You might even be able to spectate them or something like that. That'd be really slick, right? Then it really brings everybody together into a community.
Yeah.
Unify the game more. Maybe bridge the gaps in some of the when console players can see the different pace. I mean, they're all small changes, like I said. And at the end of the day, I think console, and I'm highlighting all the differences, but they're all small things. Like console and PC is still very, very similar. There's not that many big differences. That means like the game is different. I think anybody has the potential to get to their same rank that they are from going from the same baseline.
For sure.
So there's differences. I guess we can. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were going to take the transition right out of my mouth, so go for it.
Yeah, that's all right. I wanted to go to like communication in general.
Yeah.
As we were talking about trying to communicate between the platforms, it got me thinking. That's the biggest. This is both one a big difference, and two, like the biggest tip I could give console players if they're trying to climb. That's use your headset. I said this last time I came here on, and it's super important, because you don't have the text chat, and people, I think, have a tendency not to talk because no one else is talking, but often people are listening. And so maybe you could be the one to start talking. And I know in PC, it's so nice. I join like every game. There's almost always like 2 or 3 people talking, or who are at least like communicative in some way. And in console, even though people aren't talking, they're still in voice chat most of the time. And they are looking for somebody to like lead them and give them guidance. So that's like a big tip I would give. The other side of that is toxicity, positive communication, negative communication. That's a big difference. I see like a lot of more casual toxicity in console that I do in PC after switching. It was toxicity in general in console, but it's like less biting. Gosh, you PC players are much more like precise in your toxicity towards your teammates if you don't like them. There's a lot more like precise things directly at the person, as opposed to just random like, oh, F you, no F you, no F you. Like that doesn't ever hurt anybody. It's just like random. That's a pretty big difference too.
Yeah, I would say that to kind of quantify that a bit, it definitely starts becoming that way when you get into about mid-plat plus, and it gets more and more biting the higher you get, because the biting statements are like, you literally did this one thing and it lost us the entire game. And it's like they're actually right, and they're really upset at you, and it hurts because it's true, and it's also that they're being super rude and toxic about it. So
I'd rather just call me a rude name and get on with it than actually point out my flaws. Come on. I don't want that.
I mean, the side note, I shared this story in one of our chats this last week. I think Switch might have been able to read this, but I was in a game in Diamond where I was trio queuing with some friends. And I'm playing Ana, and we ended up winning the game, so no harm, no foul. But still, I was playing Ana, and this guy was playing Zarya on our team when I had a really good guy with me that's super good at Zarya. He's like, well, whatever, I'll just play DPS, it'll be fine. And this Genji gets Nano Blade and literally dashes right in front of me, and I dart him. I'm like, thank God. The second I dart him and back up 2 steps, there's a Zarya like right click, wakes him up, and he stands up and slashes me and kills 4 of us. And I was like, I can't believe you woke him up. I literally gave you the whole thing. Like, I gave him this whole thing where I was like, I slept him. I said I slept him. Don't wake him up. And he woke him up the instant I said don't do it. And I got super pissed off at him, and I told him that he did it, and he's like, I wasn't even there. I didn't do it, blah, blah, blah. I was like, super denial. I was like, you know what, screw you. You're not playing Zarya. Play DPS. And he's like, okay, fine. So we switched, my friend does Zarya. We roll the enemy team so hard because the guy was just saving bubbles when the Genji dove me, because it was my bud. So he's like, oh, I'm just not going to let you die. So we roll them all the way through the end of the map. Guess what play of the game was? Guess.
Genji,
the Genji getting woke up by the Zarya turd that woke him up, and I pointed it out because he was still in chat. And he's like, "Yeah, we were fine, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh, I swear to God, if this play of the game it is." And I was like, "Oh, it is. You little, you know." I was like, "This is totally your fault." Blah blah blah. I was like, "Look at this. You were playing Zarya." He's like, "I wasn't playing Zarya that time." I was like, "This is on defense when you were playing Zarya, dude. I hate you so much." He's like, "You know what? Don't play." It was the worst.
How did he decide that it wasn't him that woke him up? Did he think somebody else in the game has?
He was walking like halfway from spawn in Route 66, where he's like shooting these like things to trying to gain his ult charge, walking back from spawn, and just bombed where I was at, where the Genji slept, and he's just kept shooting after I slept him, and it woke him up and hit him twice. But you know,
how is he going to convince you? Like, oh no, it's the other guy that shoots energy balls.
He blamed the Reinhardt because he was swinging on point, and I was like, the Reinhardt was like 20 feet in front of me. I was like, there's no way that hammer hits that far. But it was just one of those moments where you're just like, that's a good example of biting statements that wouldn't exist lower elos, because for starters, nobody's hitting a sleep dart on a nano blading Genji unless you're outside of platinum. It just doesn't happen. So, but anyways, just a fun story for you guys about fun toxicity rather than like biting stuff, but like that's an example of some fun banter that can happen. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about statistics. Switch, you said you were trying to dig up a few things about trends and differences that you've noticed over the time, because you've been tracking console stats for a long time.
I have been, and to kind of echo what CS has said, there's a lot of similarities. That's kind of what you see. You see, like, he's even saying, yeah, should we play GOATs or not? Like, console players, especially in talking with CS at these top 500 Grandmaster levels, we're well aware of what heroes are being introduced. They're part of the Overwatch community. The biggest differences that I think you see, and this goes back to what we first started talking about, that the game is a little bit slower paced and the time to kill is much lower. You see 2 things. You see damage about 10% lower. Damage output, meaning damage per minute across the whole team, is about 10% lower. And healing is about 10% lower on console.
Right.
So you see evidence of that in the statistics. You see that there's not being much damage put out, and there's not much healing to compensate for that either. So it's just like a net just equality across the whole thing, that there's nothing happens. The biggest differences in the heroes that are picked, I think, for many, 2 years now, something like that, Ana has not been played really on console. It's never been played. when she was super popular on PC, was not nearly as played as much on console, and it's the same now. The difference now is like 25% usage difference, so
That's a
pretty
pretty
substantial
big
difference.
swing.
And it's bigger at the high tiers, right? The players that are really, really good, we're talking 50% difference. So basically a quarter of the matches at GM on console have an Ana in them, and something like 75% on PC. So huge
That's
difference.
crazy.
Yeah, there's no aim. There was, for the longest time, there was no friendly aim assist, so that explains that. I mean, well, aim assist isn't great. Having no aim assist is worse. And so Ana's on console was a real joke trying to hit teammates. There was like no way they were hitting anything like a Genji or a Tracer. That wasn't happening on most elos, so that's understandable.
And the other interesting one, which I swear we talked about the last time you and I CS were together, is that Winston is the other one that isn't played that much either.
Interesting.
Which was interesting, and I think what we talked about. Now, correct me if I'm wrong if we didn't talk about this. I felt like your explanation for that was that being able to do the leaps was very hard to aim. Do you remember that? Talking about that, or maybe I was talking.
Oh,
to
it's
someone
because
else.
you
No, that
can't
could totally be
flick
true.
up the you
can't
can't flick up the joystick fast enough to get the correct jumps.
to
it's
do the
harder
jumps.
to do the flicks. It's harder to, for instance, like turn your body. So you know that in higher elos, you're gonna want to turn your Winston butt towards the Widowmaker so you don't get headshot.
Right.
You have fat chance doing that with a controller without having really high sensitivity.
Right.
There's also the fact that a Winston, by design, necessitates a faster game pace that console players might not want. I mean, it's dive, it's quicker. You have much smaller windows of opportunity, where a console player base might want to slow Reinhardt, Zarya, slow and steady wait for war of attrition type playstyle. I think it's a combination of those two, probably.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think we did have that same conversation. That was exactly it. You have to flick. I think what you said, CS, 2 years ago or whatever it was, or a year and a half ago, was that you just to hold the stick so that you can so you can make a jump is just like too too difficult, relatively speaking. So that's PC. That's what's played a little bit more on PC. There's also a couple other ones like Zenyatta, which I think makes sense too. It's kind of more of an aim heavy hero. But Mercy is much more played on console, right? Because Ana's not being played.
She's like the next in line, I would imagine. You know.
Yeah.
Right. No aiming involved. Very little aiming.
Right. And the other one is Moira a little bit too. I thought that was interesting that even Grandmaster players are at least playing Moira a bit on console. Do you see Moira in your games?
I do. I play Moira in my games. My win rate on her was pretty high because it's sort of conceding that you're not good enough to play Ana well. Because Ana, undoubtedly in this meta, is stronger than Moira, but a good Moira is still better than a bad Ana. And if you're not hitting shots with Ana, it's better to go Moira. And so you'll see people reaching for the stars with their controller saying, I'm going to play Ana and I'm going to hit that Genji that's double jumping, dashing everywhere. Or you see the player who's like, okay, I got to Grandmaster playing tank and healers. Yeah, right. I'm just going to fade and spray my healing everywhere. And it might not be maxing, but console, as we've been talking about, is much less about min-maxing and getting the biggest bang for your buck.
You're getting the next best thing, right? It's kind of like that mentality. It's like, what's the next best thing? Because the best thing that could be played in this moment is like restrictive in this way, and so I can't do that.
Right. So I'm really bad for with a scope. My my favorite heroes on console are like Hanzo and Soldier, and so but I'm terrible at Widow. So but that doesn't, you don't get to change your elo based on what role you get. I think that's a great idea. We probably don't have time to talk about having a role-based SR system, but so when I get into a game and the average SR is 4,200, and I got there because I can click, press buttons, heads. You don't say click because you don't click, but you hit heads as Hanzo.
Click heads. Yeah.
But then 3 people insta-lock DPS, and I've got a flex. I'm not going to give them my diamond tier Ana because I can barely aim with that. I'm going to give them my Moira and just be very safe and heal them all, and it usually works out.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, you play Ana, don't you?
Yeah,
quite a
pretty
bit.
much
You have played in the past.
almost all the time I play Ana. It's like the only hero that I've been playing a lot.
Your Ana with like the mouse and keyboard is very comparable to even like the highest levels of Ana I've seen, and it's really good, especially with scope heroes. So
yeah,
that's just like a difference right there.
Right.
Pretty big.
So I wanted to ask a few other questions to follow up on these stats with Switch and CS to answer. And the main thing would be since the last we talked, because there are not just Ashe and Ana. Basically, I think it was around the time that Moira released was the last time we really talked about stuff. But we haven't had Ashe in the conversation, or Brigitta, or Hammond.
Oh God, the hamster.
And I can see Hammond being really, really oppressive because of how easy it is to move around on the grappling hook.
Listen. All right, hamster reaches speeds that a lot sensitivities cannot follow. Like literally cannot follow the speeds at a hamster.
He's a pain in the butt for me to shoot with a mouse. Okay.
Right, exactly. He's rough to play against. He terrorizes his console.
Okay. What about the new changes for Torbjorn and Symmetra that we mentioned with their regards to their adjustments, or Brigitta kind of coming in and out? The new armor changes. Obviously, the new Reaper hit you guys just as hard as he hit us, but there's a lot less data on that. What do you guys think about those?
Both the builders, I think, like we said earlier, require more coordination than they used to in their previous builds. So that actually helped. Especially Torb seems kind of weak in general right now. I think he probably needs a buff, and so he's not that much of an issue. Sim to a lesser extent, but getting a team to all effectively use teleporter when nobody is on a mic is impossible. So she's not that much of an issue as well. As for Brigitta, I'm just gonna go through them all real quick.
Do it.
Brigitta, she's really powerful. Obviously, she shouldn't have to aim, but she falls into that category of she's not. You play her because she's a lot of people, especially in higher elos, play her not because they enjoy playing Brigitta. She doesn't have a very fun gameplay mechanic for a lot of people. They play her because they'll get her wins. And in console, there's more often that mentality of I want to play what I want to play. I'm not trying to min-max my win. I want to win, but I'm not trying to min-max my win percentage so that I can get picked up by a contender's team. So they'll probably stay away from Brigitta. So Brigitta still is pretty strong. I think I've seen in my game she's been played less though when she was really powerful, like in the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm. I also linked the whole hero roster if you guys wanted to run any through that. I don't even think we've talked about Sombra. We had all of the hero changes with, let's see, I'm just like looking through these. Roadhog rework, Wrecking Ball introduction, Bastion rework, Doomfist rework.
So I was just looking at my stats a little bit in detail. Going back to a previous conversation, there's actually a lot of evidence for this Ashe Dynamite aiming problem.
Really?
Yeah,
just looking at my aiming now. Yeah, it is for secondary abilities, it is the biggest difference between console and PC by far.
There you go.
For example, on average in GM, per 10 minutes, Ashe gets 8 kills attributed to Dynamite on PC and only 4 in Grandmaster on console.
Yeah,
half.
It's just they just.
So literally is it's half, or if you want to flip that around, it's twice as many on PC than that, and everything else is kind of about the same. The alts are at most 10% different, so it all falls into that 10% plus 10% damage type thing, even ultimates. But yeah, so this Ashe one is really a standout, so that's really fascinating.
It just completely slipped there. I mean, they didn't think about it. I don't know how many like console players they have working at the Blizzard development team to actually look through, and it's clear nobody thought like, hey, wait a minute, introducing this non-aim assist mechanic where you throw it at a bunch of targets that have aim assist is going to inherently make it really hard to hit. Nobody that's completely slipped through. Doesn't stop people from trying to play Ashe, because going back to the thing of playing heroes they like, I still have seen way too many Ashe. Most of the time, when the last like month Ashe was released, my top 3 avoids were 3 Ashe players that I know are playing right now that are going to, terrorize the rank with their terrible Dynamite usage. So yeah, it's ugly. I wish they would, I don't know, have like I feel like they should have like one dedicated console guy that they put in the corner that's all dusty or in the basement. Like your job
get the guy in the corner.
Test everything. Yeah, like your job, you're the console guy, all right? Every patch we do, you play on it and you tell us if there's something we need to change, because I don't feel like they have.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So CS, what do you think about Sombra? Because this is something that's been a pressing question that I just always forget to ask you about. Because for me, if you have a lower time to less time total time to kill, and you can hack Reinhardt's on the regular when they're way more populous. I feel like that is really, really oppressive. And being able to just have a button on your controller just to bail at a moment's notice, you don't really need a whole lot, and you can farm EMP pretty effectively, I'd say, on console, just from the stuff that you've been saying today.
That's it's really insightful. She is very strong on console. There's two differences counteracting each other here with Sombra. The first one is her hack time, I believe, is 0.6 seconds. I already talked about how you couldn't have time to turn for Doomfist. You certainly don't have time to turn and stop a hack. So if a Sombra wants to hack you, unless you're like a Genji player that already has really high sensitivity, that hack's going to go off. You're not going to have time to turn and stop it unless you're already ready for it. So hacks are much more free on console. Is that Sombra requires more teamwork, and then that sort of nullifies her back down a little bit. You need a Sombra to call out that the Reinhardt is hacked, so that your Reinhardt's not like picking his nose, looking at the sky. He's like, oh, wait a minute, my counterpart's hacked, and he's actually going to try to do something about it. You see that less. EMPs need to be set up and like complemented with other abilities, like EMP Diva Bomb. You're not going to see that as much on console because people aren't talking. So I think Sombra, while she's more powerful in like a one-on-one scenario, and she's really annoying, it's harder to get larger value as a whole with her.
So would you say if you're running like a full team of 6 people communicating and like actually actively doing like scrimmaging and like playing together, that Sombra could potentially be really, really, really strong if everyone's communicating on console?
Yes. And in fact, on game nights, we've definitely had Sombra players that it's like a breath of fresh air to them to come to a situation where they know all 6 people.
Where they can talk to people.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. And they terrorize that game as Sombra because they're setting up EMP bombs, they're calling out hack targets, and it's just a shame people don't do it more. It goes back to the number one for console players: use your mic, please. It's so helpful.
It's a lot easier. I can see why it's so easy to play Hanzo too, because of A, higher population on Zarya players. B, Zarya is like super easy to kind of combo with because you just listen for her shouting about the grab and you just shoot in that general direction for your ultimate, so you don't really have to worry about too much.
Right. That's the one thing. Everybody at this point knows the Zarya grab sound, and it's sort of like a forced teamwork moment where she literally puddles them up and points at them and says, attack these people now. So you're totally right about that.
Now, my last question here about heroes would then be, because, you know, less Ana, more Moira, more Mercy, and also more Zarya Rein, with regards to additionally scope stuff being much more painful to aim, that definitely is going to transition me into saying how free Pharah is going to be to play, right? Pharah is something that got buffed recently as well, and I wanted to ask you again about it because you have a much faster rate of fire now, but you have to be more accurate with it. So I can see both of those things actually working against each other with regards to her effectiveness on console. And honestly, I feel like that particular change was, like you said, is more of a happy accident for console, in my opinion, because like being more accurate on console is going to be a little bit harder with Pharah, but also it's going to reward the really good ones. And additionally, it's that balance change that hit PC really hard to make sure that, you know, Pharah players aren't just getting free stuff at lower ranks. Also just translates over to, you know, console being like a really good balance change just overall for Pharah.
Right, exactly. Yep. She even with the changes that made her a little bit more manageable, because you're right, she has to be more accurate. She's probably the poster child for levels. You don't see her super often. It's almost like it's like a gentleman's agreement, because when somebody pulls out a Pharah in like a console game, it really ruins it, because you often have to go double hit scan. Like one hit scan's not enough. You have to go double, probably like in the Diva 2, and it just sort of makes the whole game. It pins the game down to which team is better at aiming at this Pharah, and it takes away a lot of other avenues. And so I almost feel like I used to play a lot of Pharah, and I stopped, not because I didn't enjoy playing her, she was good. It just felt like playing Pharah, the best counter to a Pharah on console is for the other team to also go Pharah, because the other team can't counter it, and then it's just like a Pharah duel, and that's not very fun. But you're right, the lack of aiming and sensitivity with a controller, it's harder to aim up. I don't know if, I guess it also is on
it's harder to aim up in general based off of how the axis works. Yeah.
I don't know if it's even more on console, but it's just rough, and especially with low sensitivities. So if she gets like right above you, it's so hard to track her and hit her with low sensitivity. So yeah, she's always a monster. I've seen trio Qs times of different groups that farm their way up to top 500 playing Pharah, and they trio queue, and I have to stop playing if I see them on, because first of all, when you're at regardless of your platform, when you're at a high enough rank, you're going to be playing against the same people for the most of the night because there's not that many people up there, and I'm going to get against them, and they abuse the fact that Pharmacy is so powerful, and then they have the Zarya to bubble the Pharah, and it's just game over. Like, you'll never kill that Pharah when the Zarya is always bubbling her. It's rough.
I can imagine.
But you're right about Pharah.
Switch, any other comments here based off of the data analysis or any other follow-up questions with CS? We'll probably need to wrap up the show here with maybe one more question or topic, and we can get out of here.
I think that's about it. I think this has been kind of interesting, especially the Ashe. I think that's, as someone who likes to dig into the data, just to know that there's that one skill that is just heads and tails above in terms of difference between console and PC. It's Dynamite. That's something that we see all the time, I think, Rob. Don't you always? There's a lot of Ashe play, and that's how she farms ult. That's how you get Bob. you throw out the Dynamite and you shoot it. And if you can't do that because of aim assist, like CS was saying.
I've been playing a ton of Pharah recently too, so like, I totally understand. Like, if you're not hitting your shots, you're not farming your ult like at all. It's really hard to get value out of it. And then if I'm not in a queue where someone's actually willing to play Mercy with me or play a comp around it, it's like I'll insta-lock Pharah and see what happens. And then like if nobody's going to kind of adjust to that, then it's like, well, I guess I'm getting Genji practice today, boys, because it's not going to happen. And it's going to be ugly.
Rob Genji.
Yeah.
My Genji's pretty bad.
I want to see it now. I want to see it.
Oh, no. Go play it on console.
A lot of these changes really do seem to have benefited console play, like the Bastion chain against Symmetra, Torb, and now I'm thinking about it, even the Pharah change, right? The splash damage reduction and make instead for direct hits. It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, hopefully it's better for you guys as a result of that.
I do think the Pharah change was meant with, you mentioned earlier if they were thinking about console, the Pharah specifically, I do think they thought about console, because Pharah is well known to be a higher problem in console, and that change did help a little. So I think they're listening a little bit.
I have to tell you, on PC, that was a much welcome change for me, to be honest, because like there's lower, even I wouldn't even say lower, I would say upper mid to low tier play Pharahs that don't get shot down. Like, people in the community just at large that are in the casual player base don't know how to deal with her at all. Like, they just don't know. They're like, I'm gonna pick double hit scan and that's how you kill it on PC, when in reality it's like, no, you either play a comp that says we're gonna ignore the Pharah, kill everything, and then she's left over because she can't contest the point, or you just run D.Va and you just say no.
Right, D.Va.
So it's one of those weird things where the at large the community has a rough time figuring out A, how to deal with her, B, how to play her, and C, like if both of these things are in tandem, it's just like she's just free. So it's really quite difficult. But let's get into our final question here, which is talking about improving and peripherals. I'm going to kind of loop these in together because I know that CS is a firm believer that peripherals, especially on console, are much more important than I think they are on PC.
Yeah, so several of these are stuff I already mentioned last time I was on, but that was 2 years ago, so there's, I'm sure, many viewers. Control Freaks is my number one ask here because it's very cheap. Control Freaks are like $10 to $15, and it doesn't need to be that brand. Basically, just thumbstick extenders in general help immensely, at least in my opinion. They attach to your thumbstick, and what they do is they like double the range of motion you have. The best way to use an analogy is as if you lowered your mouse sensitivity in half and got a twice as big as a mouse pad. We all know how big that helps, from going from a little tiny mouse pad with a higher sense to a bigger one. And that's what it does on for your controller. And that's really important because you already have like millimeters of rotation to use. So adding that extra length helps a lot. You have to get used to your thumb being higher. But once you get used to it, especially if you're a player that uses heroes that require micro adjustments like a McCree or a Soldier or an Ashe or a Widow, that's really helpful. And that's cheap. I mean, cheap, $10 to $15. Watch to be listening to a strategic podcast. I'm sure you care enough to buy, a $10 to $15 peripheral that could help your aim by a significant portion. So that's a big one. A headset also is big. Talking is big, especially if you're like a tank player. When I'm playing, you'll see in my streams, on my PS4 streams. When I'm playing DPS, I'm very rarely talking in comms, just because most of my job is just hit people's heads. I could talk more, but when I have to flex to like a tank player, I'm talking almost the whole time. And my job is to, even if people won't respond, I know they're listening, and it works. You play Winston or you play Reinhardt, you call out targets, you treat it like it's a PC game, and people will rally towards you to make it more like a PC game in terms of coordination. So that's a big tip. Let's see here. I think I have one more. Oh yeah, you can attach paddles to the back of your controller. This is totally, I was gonna say legal, but I guess anything, there's not like laws, but it's totally fine to do. It doesn't break any rules to have you attach 2 extra buttons to your back of your controller. And that is big, especially in Overwatch, because you sort of have a overloading of buttons that you need that are important. Like jumping and crouching in Overwatch is a lot more important than in other FPSs, especially for like a Genji or Lucio player. And so having those extra back buttons to use is really, really helpful. That'll help your mobility quite a bit. Let's see, anything else? Those are mostly peripheral based. Don't be toxic, but that's for everybody.
That's for everybody, folks. Oh man.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I guess settings. We should talk
settings,
about settings.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. We shouldn't miss settings. In my opinion, to find a sensitivity and stick to it, because unlike PC, PC players usually have the luxury of having one size fits all sensitivity. Like I have one sensitivity that I use on PC, and I can play Genji with the sensitivity. I can also play Soldier, but you don't usually have this luxury on console. Sensitivity that you want for Genji is different than a sensitivity you want for McCree. And a sensitivity that you can like 180 in melee after a dash with Genji, which is a common thing you see with proficient Genji players, is a sensitivity that you will not be able to accurately hit somebody with a hit scan player. So I would suggest find a sensitivity that you like and sticking to it. And what that means, that'll also sort of cordon you off into a subset of heroes that you like to play the most. And to overextend between different hero types, whether it be like a Genji player and a McCree player, you're gonna have a rough time, because that either means you're gonna have to play a suboptimal version of one of those 2 heroes with a bad sensitivity, or you're gonna have to have 2 different sensitivities, and that really hurts your muscle memory. And I think muscle memory is super important. It allows you to use more brain space to think about strategy in the game. And you're going to have if you swap between rounds, you swap your sensitivities, you have to be thinking about your thumbstick. So definitely that's a pretty simple one, but it'll help you a lot. I've stuck to the exact same sensitivity since literally the second week I got the game in 2016. It's not perfect, but it's what I'm used to, and what I'm used to is better than like switching it up, in my opinion. After 2 straight years, I can do it without thinking, and I think it has helped me a lot in my DPS play.
Right on.
Aim assist, this is also the same. They've added like 5 different levers to change your aim assist and your sensitivity. So that's actually pretty nice that they've done that. But where that really is them saying they don't know how to properly balance it themselves, and so they're giving it to the player, like, you try to make it good because we can't. But your hero, you can slide the aim assist window size based on whether you're playing projectile or hit scan. I move the aim assist project window size really, really small when I'm playing like Hanzo, because you don't want your cursor to stick over your target when you're trying to lead the target. That just ruins your
Right.
aim. You don't want that there. So that setting you can change on a person by person basis, and that won't hurt your muscle memory.
So definitely spend some time picking apart what it feels like in training range for sure, and then going in a couple quick plays and then adjusting on the fly for a while.
And it seems like that goes without saying, is tailoring settings to heroes, like in terms of aim assist size. But I've talked to a lot of people that have not. They just have one flat thing, and I think that really hurts their like Zen play and their Hans and their Pharah and their Junkrat when they're trying to play with these huge aim assist windows that they don't even need.
Sure.
It's hurting their aim there.
Sure.
I think that's it.
That's it, yeah? Okay, so let's close out the show by thanking a few people over at patreon.com/OmnicLab. You guys can support us on the show financially. It's the best way to support the show, especially as we are trying to get more guests, and we're trying to go to more events. We're trying to hit BlizzCon yearly if possible. It's really hard for me to get there. There's also some other things that we have to do when we go, like landing a couple like guest spots. We're trying to like more or less just get relevance. We're also trying to cover costs for website and and just like equipment upgrades. If stuff breaks, we have to replace it. It's stuff like that. So definitely help us out by going over to patreon.com/OmnicLab. Some of our top level supporters over there are Top Score Solutions, Anthony E., Solo PS4, Jan Jinkle, Durandal, Roger B., Shazir, Tragic Zach, Chris DePlaya, Lissum, Connell M., Matthew Z., Brendan D., and a brand new patron this week, we have Rick H. Welcome to the team of scientists. We really appreciate you guys joining on the squad. If you guys want to also have interest in ad reads for the show, we can work that out privately with you like we did with Shazir and Top Score Solutions. We're always willing to do that. I have another one coming up soon with a good friend of mine, and we'll be looking into that. Additionally, if you want to support us for free, you can listen to the show anytime, share it with your friends, or head over to iTunes.com and try to leave us a review like Killer Delta from US did this last week. He said, "Thank you. I'm a coach for a mid-plat team, and I've used some of the tips and strats you guys provide to help shape the 7 individuals on our team. Even if it's just a minor improvements, it's a huge help as I'm learning to coach myself. So thank you so much for everything." And that's a huge encouragement for me because I know that I dip my toe into coaching and it ain't easy. So I really, really appreciate you leaving us an iTunes review. And also, good luck in your coaching in the future for any of you guys out there as well. Good luck. Keep it coming. Feel free to ask us questions about coaches or recommend some coaches to us. We've been trying to get on here and there. If you guys like merch, you can get some cool stuff that's Omnic Lab related on our website as well. We pretty much never plug that. And CS and Switch. You guys want to talk about the community real quick and how people get involved in the Discord?
Sure.
Yeah, well, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So I mentioned before, omnicmeta.com is the site that I run. I focus on meta reports, patch reports, hero reports in general, and I'm added a player stats so you can keep track of your player stats, track them over time, see how well you're doing, see if you're improving. A lot of cool stuff that I have there, and also I'm hopefully going to be adding some Overwatch League stuff you guys can look forward to. If you want to follow on Twitter, it's twitter.com/omnicmeta. And you can follow me personally on Twitter at twitter.com/theswitchfox.
CS?
Me, no Twitter, but my YouTube and Twitch are both Jaltech. Twitch is Jaltech_. That's JALTEK. I've parsed my PS4 gameplay between my PC. I'll put PS4 in parentheses. So if you want to look back through my VODs to look at, you can choose whether you want to see a pretty good PS4 gameplay or very mediocre PC. That's pretty important, so you guys can tell. I stream very irregularly, which I heard is the way to go if you want to get big in Twitch. Barely stream at all and don't tell anybody. But if you guys want to see, if you guys want to follow, I'll try at least once. So once a week. Hope you find me there. In the Discord, I would say, if you're a console, well, any player obviously, but there's quite a large community and even like a sub community that you can be a part of. I'm always looking at that in the Discord, and I sometimes comment, and I always host game nights. And so I would say, if any rank that you are, if you want to improve and you want to meet nice people that will also improve with you, definitely join the Discord. It's a huge resource.
For sure.
And finally, if Blizzard's looking for a console guy to stick in your basement, I'm your guy. I'll do it. I got a degree in nuclear engineering. It's not helpful at all, but it sounds fancy, and I will totally sit there and complain about the problems for days. I can do that.
That's the dream job, is complaining for your job, right?
Right.
That's the best. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to one episode 137. Again, CS and Switch, it's always a pleasure to have you guys here. I love having you guys on the show. Lots of insights, and definitely know the motifs of the show really well. So it definitely helps me out a lot, especially when we're needing guests and Andres is away. Makes me look a lot better than I am, so that's super helpful for my ego, at least.
A lot
of fun. Thanks, Rob. It was great to be on.
Yeah, you guys are great. And if you guys want to follow the show, please just join the Discord. We're all there. We actually talk to you guys pretty much regularly. Switch and CS are always in there. There's PS4, Xbox community, just the large community. We actually have the sister show, Overwatch League Recap. Their whole subsection of their community's in there as well. Lots of overlap, of course. If you guys want to find us there, it's discord.me/OmnicLab, and you have to put it in your browser. If you try to put that in Discord and get the invite, it won't work. But I put a link on our website. If you want to find Andres, head over to twitter.com/iPlayGames. That's IPLAI Games on Twitter, and you can find me at NotRob on Twitter. And I think that's just going to do it for the show. If you guys want to talk anything and everything, you can find us there. And remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We will see you next week. And Remember, just be good to each other out there. Don't be toxic.
Please.
Bye.
Big thanks to you guys in the chat, Mr. Mars, Shazir, JRock69, New Blood, and Meet the Ben. You guys are great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop the recordings. Boom. Dude, an hour? Not too bad.
1:37.
All right, bye, stream. We're going to call it here.